Have you ever taken a period of time off from cardio and then tried to get back into it and thought, wow, I feel super deconditioned? How have you approached that? Have you decided that, oh, you know what, I just need to not do cardio for the time being because it feels so uncomfortable? Or have you dove head first and said, you know what, I'm going to try to get it all back within the next week? On today's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, we're going to explore this topic of how to rebuild your fitness and your stamina after you've been derailed from doing your cardio for your workouts for a period of time. We're going to cue the intro song and then we're going to dive right into this conversation. Welcome to the Exercise is Health podcast, where we're talking about exercise, health, and the interconnectedness of the two. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we will be coming to you every single week from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg. Hey, what's going on, exercisers? This is Charlie. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to let you know about a new training that's happening this week titled How to Rebuild Your Aching Body in as little as 6 weeks without changing your lifestyle. See, if you love the discussions that we have every single week on the Exercise is Health podcast, but you want more of the practical application, the details of how to take the information and apply it to your workouts, then you need to be on this training. All you have to do to get registered for free is go to secrets.exerciseforlifemethod.com. But space is limited, so make sure to get registered ASAP. Now, without further ado, let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, welcome back, exercisers, to the Exercise is Health podcast. We are your hosts, Charlie
and Julie,
and we're coming to you from our studio, Muscle Activation Schaumburg, here in Schaumburg, Illinois, where we believe that your health is your most valuable asset, and the single best thing that you can do to both boost and protect this asset is exercise. Specifically, exercise is geared towards building the health and function of your muscles. Now, how many times in the past have you had an illness or gone on vacation and you were consistent with your workouts leading up to that point, but then after that event, you tried getting back into the swing of things and you're like, wow, my body just feels deconditioned. I feel out of shape. I feel weaker. I feel more sluggish. And everything that kind of felt easy before feels super difficult now. I know I've definitely had that happen to me from time to time, like especially after an illness or things like that. And here's the thing, when that happens, a lot of times it can be the turning point for people who were exercising consistently to either greatly reduce their exercise consistency or just stop exercising altogether. And so today we want to discuss this scenario with you and provide a simple plan of action that you can implement to make sure that you can get back to exercising consistently, but also do so in a way that will help you progress your stamina, progress your fitness, progress your strength in a way that actually feels good for your body.
You know, this happens to everyone at some point in their fitness journey. And if you've been exercising for years and years and maybe, you know, you're just used to this, you probably kind of know the deal. Like every once in a while, you know, something comes up that's really stressful, maybe something in your family life that takes you away from exercise or an illness. And, you know, there's kind of this revamping up period, rebuilding momentum period. And you're used to that. You kind of know that's how it goes. And this information is going to help you. But this is also really important for those of you who have just started and you're saying, hey, like I just built all this momentum. I was excited. I had my routine, my rhythm, and then I got sick. And you're feeling, dang, how do I get back on the horse here, so to say? And I want to let you guys know that if you are brand new, you can do it. There's some technique to it. And I also want to let you know, if you're brand new, that this is actually all part of everyone's fitness journey. There's ebbs and flows. There's times when you feel in sync with what you want to be doing, and there's times where you feel out of whack, and there's times that you feel like, I want to be exercising, but it just, why can't I get back into the rhythm? That's all part of it. And you're going to experience this through the years, all the time, always. And I know that at the end of this podcast, you're going to have a few more tangible things that you can apply to getting back into your routine, building up your momentum again, because these skills you're going to need for forever.
Absolutely. What spurred this idea for this episode was actually a conversation I was having with one of my clients who was very consistent with her exercise. She was doing it multiple times a week, and then she got ill. She got ill to the point that she had to take a few weeks off of exercising. And when she tried to get back into it, she was experiencing exactly what we were describing, like more fatigue than she was accustomed to with her exercise, just a lack of desire to do it, feeling like, oh, wow, this thing that used to feel easy now all of a sudden feels really hard. And when those feelings creep in, especially with something that used to feel easier or something that, you used to do routinely, you used to do consistently, we can start to question ourselves, and we can start to question and think, oh gosh, like, do I really want to keep doing this? Like, do I want to go back through that whole process of kind of rebuilding my stamina and my strength and everything like that? Or would it just be easier to just say, yeah, you know what? I'm just not going to do this right now. I'm going to push this off to the side. I'm going to keep trugging along how I'm going, just not exercising. And yeah, like I feel more tired throughout my day. I feel more lethargic and stuff, but it's a heck of a lot easier than, trying to rebuild my strength and my stamina. And what was interesting is a lot of people end up choosing that route where they just say, okay, yeah, it's just not something that I want to do. What she was trying to do, and what I really admired, was she was trying to say, okay, I'm trying to get back to where I was by diving back in at the same point where I left off. And I think that's the other option that a lot of people choose is like, well, I used to do this exercise for, I used to do the elliptical for 20 minutes. Or I used to do, this run that was 5 miles or whatever. Let me just start back there. And that's where she was. But she was getting more and more frustrated because every time she would try, it was just another example of how much she had lost from where she was before. And so we talked through this and we created actually a really simple plan of action of how she could consistently not only get her exercise in, but progress herself and make sure that she's exercising in a way that is feeling good for her body, that's appropriate for her body. And that's exactly what we're going to share with you today.
Absolutely. Now, you guys know our big approach with weight training, and we talk about resistance training all the time because there's so many details in resistance training that's completely passed over and how to do it. But a lot of it is driven by how your body is feeling and functioning on that day. Now, we're going to be applying that same principle, but now to some cardio, right? And there are some a little bit different pieces of cardio that we have to talk about, but in general, it's going to be almost like a continuous check-in with our body as we're working into cardio. Now, remember, this can be applied to, like, let's say you are an outside walker or a treadmill walker, or let's say you're like an intense cycler. Either one, like you're getting back into where you wanted to be or where you were from this now, mildly depleted or mega depleted state from whatever took you away from cardio in the first place. So before we jump in, I want to talk to you about what happens when we start like getting our body worked up. So first, your body's like at rest, right? Our bodies love to be at rest. It conserves energy, helps us, keep the fat because that's how we survive in the wild. Okay. So anyways, then we start doing something. You get on your bike, you start walking, you start jogging, you start doing your cardio class, whatever it is. And that period of time that like teachers and trainers and instructors, quote unquote, call your warm up. Warm ups can be really, really tough, even though you're like, I'm not doing that much, but it's hard. Well, because our body is kind of overcoming this state that's saying, hey, we're going to go from being at rest to now being stressed. And of course, we're using exercise as a positive stress, but still our body is perceiving it as stress. So during that warm-up time, you have to know that no matter what's going on, whether you're feeling good or not good, your body's going to tell you, you need to stop. This is not good. There's no lions chasing us. Don't be exerting yourself like this. So during that period of time, we have to know that that's going to happen. So don't just take your first 5 minutes and be like, well, my body said to stop, so I stop. I mean, Julie and Charlie tell me to stop if I'm feeling like I should stop. Well, okay, you have to get past the warm up. So our first thing is move your body for 5 minutes, however you're planning to move it. Maybe a little bit less intense than what you're planning to do, but move your body for 5 minutes. Maybe if you're freezing cold, you're not used to it, then move it for 10. Whatever feels like the right length of warm up for you. But you do have to get past that period of like, I'm going from rest to some sort of work or stress.
I got to tell you, Julie, what you just described, I go through every single time I work out. That negotiation period of, okay, I'm sitting in the chair, sipping coffee, and I look at the clock. I'm like, okay, I know I have this window of time to get this cycle right in. It's time to get up, put your workout clothes on, put your shoes on, get on the cycle bike. So I'm like, okay, going through that. And I get on the cycle bike. And that first minute to 3 minutes, my brain's saying, dude, you're not sweating yet. Like, it would be really easy. Just get off the bike, go sit back down, keep sipping your coffee. Like, you don't need to do this right now. There'll be another time to do it. There's this negotiation that goes on every single time that I work out with my brain, where my brain is saying, you haven't committed yourself that much yet right now. Like, things are still feeling a little bit weird. You're not really like pushing, you're not breathing that hard yet. Like, you don't even need to shower after this yet. Like, it would be so easy. Just stop right now, right? Like, that goes on every single time that I exercise. And then it turns into like, okay, look, if you keep going, something bad's going to happen because you were completely safe sitting there on the chair, sipping coffee. And now, do you feel those things in your muscles? Oh my gosh, do you feel your heart beating harder? Do you feel like you're breathing harder? Why are you breathing harder? There's nothing chasing you right now. We don't need this. This is what's going on with this, is what my brain is telling me, right? And so that first 5 minutes, that's going to happen. It happens to me every single time that I work out. It's going to happen to you as well. And if you're hearing that and you're feeling that, just know that that's okay. All right. That's your brain's initial response. It's like when you get into a pool that's a little bit colder than you're expecting, and your initial response is, yo, get out. Get out. This is way too cold. And then you start moving around in the water and you're like, oh, actually, this isn't that cold. I was just, freaking out at first. It's the same idea. And it's going to happen every single time. So you have to go into your workout mentally knowing that those first 5 minutes, your brain is going to do every single thing that it can in its power to negotiate with you, to talk you out of continuing to exercise. So you have to say, I hear you, but I'm not going to listen to you right now, because you're going to get through those first 5 minutes. And what happens after those first 5 minutes is your brain starts to say, wait a second, we're not dead. Wait a second. We're okay. Wait a second. Oh, these things I was feeling with the muscles. Yeah, we're not noticing those anymore. Oh, yeah, you're starting to get a little bit sweatier. Like we're able to now like compensate for this stress. We're able to respond to this stress of like increased energy demands and, increased exertion, everything like that. Oh, okay. You know what? We got this. You're good. You can keep going. It's not nearly as scary as we initially thought it would be. Your brain will transition into that, but you have to get through those first 5 minutes.
That's right. So get through your first 5 minutes and know that you're going to have to work through that kind of talk. And maybe you do cardio and you're like, I don't experience that. Well, good for you. You are in the minority of, or you are in the
silently clapping for you.
I know, you are the rare unicorn, and good. Okay. So after that, you got to ask yourself, here's step 2. So number 1, you got to start with 5 minutes or whatever your warm up is, 10 minutes, whatever it is. Get through that time of like immense mental brain negotiation. Okay. Next, ask yourself a question. How am I feeling? What's going on? And after you get through your warm up, most times you're going to notice that you're like, hey, I'm feeling much better. All those aches and pains that I was worried about feel better. Unless you're doing your warm up too crazy, then they should be feeling better. Your brain is going to feel better. Your brain's going to start releasing different neurochemicals that make you feel good, make you feel energized. So that's the time when we are actually going to start listening to our body. Okay. It's like, okay, brain, we trust you now. Let's tune in. And you're going to decide, how much longer am I going to go? Could I do 5 more minutes? And most of the time, you're probably going to think, yeah, I can do 5 more minutes. And then you can invite yourself to do those next 5 minutes. And you're going to go through like time by time, asking yourself, checking in, how am I feeling? How is it going? Is my knee feeling good? Is it getting flared up? And normally if you've taken a break from cardio, the symptoms or feelings that you're feeling are going to normally feel very systemic. So if you have a joint issue, you're always dealing with that anyways. But when you've taken a break from cardio, you're going to feel systemic stuff like, am I starting to feel like really tired now? Am I starting to feel like nauseous now? Am I feeling like hot flashes that aren't like normal? You know what I'm saying? Like it's really hot all of a sudden. Those are signs that your system is getting too stressed. One sign that I get is I start feeling a little headachy. So I notice like, okay, my muscles feel okay, but systemically it's getting too stressed. So that's one of my signals to know I should stop. So anyways, break up your time and don't be like, hey, I'm going to go 30 minutes. Maybe 30 minutes is my max, but every X amount of time, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, I'm going to check in. And if I can do the next chunk of time, I'm going to do it. And if I'm not feeling so hot or I'm getting signals that I should be stopping, then I'm going to stop.
Yeah, here's really the big secret with this whole thing. And so you get through those first 5 minutes, right? And then you go into this next period and you do exactly what Julie was just saying. You need to ask yourself this one specific question, okay? After you get through those 5 minutes and you get to the point where you're like, okay, yeah, like my brain's not freaking out anymore. You ask yourself the question, if I did another 5 minutes, would I still feel well? If I did another 5 minutes, would I still feel well? And so you think about that. You're like, I could do another 5 minutes. So like, okay, cool. And then throughout that 5 minute period, you're checking in. Okay, how are my muscles doing? How are my joints doing? Like how's my system overall doing? And then at that next 5 minute mark, you ask yourself, okay, if I did another 5 minutes, would I still feel well? And you consistently ask yourself that question all along the way, breaking up however long, you're planning on working out for, but you break it up into those segments. Now, if 5 minutes feels like a little bit of a stretch, you ask yourself, okay, if I did another 3 minutes. Now here, the time duration doesn't matter as much. You're not going to say like, all right, 20 minutes or even 10 minutes. So say like 3 minutes, 5 minutes. That's a nice kind of check-in period for people, because so often what happens is we say, okay, cool, I got through that, like I've heard with running. There's like, the first 3 miles are the hardest. And then you get through 3 miles and, you can keep going or whatever, right? So a lot of times what happens is people do, their period where they're like, okay, now my body feels good. And then they just check out. And then they're just on like cruise control and they get to the end of their workout and they're like, wow, my body doesn't feel good now. I don't really know when it stopped feeling good and when to not feeling good, but I know right now it doesn't feel good. So we want to avoid that, right? We want to make sure that we are continuously checking in. So 3 minutes, 5 minutes, you check in, you ask yourself, could I do another 3 minutes and still feel well? Could I do another 5 minutes and still feel well? And as long as the answer to that question is yes, then you keep moving forward. But at any point, if the answer to that question becomes anything other than yes, like a resounding yes, like not like, I don't know, or like, maybe, like if it's anything other than a resounding yes, I could move forward, then you stop. It's as simple as that. It's like, can I go another 3-5 minutes? Yes. Yes, I can. Awesome. Keep going. If it's anything other than that, then you stop. But that will allow you to continuously check in with your body and see like, okay, yeah, I think I'm reaching my max. Now is a good stopping point.
That's absolutely right. And one of the things that I constantly am telling my clients is when they're exercising, I'm always like, so how's it going? Can we do more? And they know that I'm asking, not are you interested in doing more, but does your body feel like it's well enough, feeling good enough to do more? Because here's the thing, a lot of times in the gym industry, we're told to like turn off your brain and just push, right? And there is some value to that in that, like, some of us are really not interested in exercising ever, like never ever. Like we're not interested in it, so we have to just force ourselves to do it. But at the same time, we do have to get ourselves to exercise, but we have to be mindful that it's not making our bodies worse. And we don't realize that when we're not checking in with our bodies, that we have the high risk of making our bodies worse for a long time or worse temporarily for a short time. And so just keep that in mind when you're doing your check-ins. Like, hey, am I wanting to get to my laundry? That's why I'm stopping. Or it's because I'm actually not going to feel well with this next 5-minute bout. So just keep that in mind when you're doing your check-ins that, hey, it's about how your body's feeling, not necessarily about maybe your interest level.
Exactly. Okay, now step number 3. So step number 1 is you start with those 5 minutes. You win the negotiation with your brain. You keep pushing forward. Step number 2 is once you get through the part where your brain's screaming at you to stop, you start asking on a consistent time interval, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Hey, if I do the next 3 minutes, if I go another 5 minutes, will I still feel well? As long as the answer to that question is yes, then you keep going. But here's step number 3, and this is really key. You need to set a time cap, okay? You don't keep going until the point where you don't feel well. You say before you even start or as you're going along, you're like, you know what? The most I'm going to do today is 30 minutes. The most I'm going to do today is 60 minutes, whatever it is. But you need to set that time cap. So even if you get to that 30-minute mark and you ask, well, if I did another 5 minutes, will I still feel well? You've already determined ahead of time that you're not going past that. Why this is so important is because it reduces the likelihood that you end up feeling lousy after your workouts. It reduces the likelihood that you misread your body and think, oh yeah, I can keep going. And then all of a sudden you realize that you're actually on a very steep downward slope and you don't know how to stop it. And you get to that point where you're like, wow, I just feel terrible, right? So you set that time cap, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever it is, you predetermine that. And all along the way, you ask, okay, if I do another 3 minutes, if I do another 5 minutes, can I keep going? But you do not go past that time cap.
Absolutely. So use these 3 tips so that you are able to progress back into your cardio routine. And this will help your body get reconditioned, get back your endurance, because we all know that you can get derailed. Now, it is crucial that you do get back into the rhythm and you do it in a smart way, because there are immense consequences if you don't. Number 1, and we don't want you to fall into this trap, especially if you're new, is that you just don't exercise. And if you're not exercising, then you're kind of just at the mercy of time and your aging body. And we want you to be using exercise to keep yourself active, keep yourself young. But the other part is that if you are one of those people that just turns your brain off and pushes through and doesn't use any strategy, well, then you can also run the risk of getting really fatigued and you're not progressing your body, you're fatiguing and stressing your body. So exercise is a stress, and done too much turns into a negative stress. We're trying to use this stress as a positive experience for our body, meaning my body adapts, my body gets stronger because of it. And you can run yourself far enough where it's like, hey, now you're in like extreme hormonal fatigue. So be careful of that. Use strategy as you're rebuilding back into your cardio routine.
Now, I want to tell you one big secret about this whole process, because we've kind of framed it as like, hey, if you've been sick or you've fallen out of the routine or you've been derailed. But the fact of the matter is that I use this 3-step process every single time that I exercise, every single time that I do cardio, every single time that I do resistance training, every single time that I exercise, I use this 3-step process, because it allows me not only to continuously check in with my body, but make sure that I'm not doing too much for my body, and allows me to keep coming back to my workouts day after day after day. So even if you are currently feeling well, even if you are currently kicking butt with your routine as far as your exercise consistency and feeling great after your workouts, I'd still recommend implementing this 3-step strategy so you can make sure that you continue to feel well. You can make sure that you continue to stay consistent with your workouts. And then if at any point in the future you end up getting derailed, well, then you just go back to doing the thing that you've been doing all along, which is implementing this 3-step process to help you rebuild your strength, rebuild your fitness, rebuild your conditioning. So who do you know that needs to hear this episode? Who do you know that has fallen out of the routine of exercising consistently, either because of being ill or vacation or holidays or family things coming up or whatever it is, and they're trying to get back into the swing of things, but every time they do, They don't last long because they end up feeling lousy. They end up feeling discouraged. They end up feeling like, oh, I've lost too much since I was doing it consistently. Share this episode with them so they can learn this simple 3-step process that they can start implementing immediately to help them progress their workouts in a way that feels good for their body and is appropriate for their body. And while you're online, head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a rating and review. It helps more people find our podcast when they're looking for information on exercise and when they're looking for information on health. So if you found value in this conversation today, let us know by leaving us that 5-star rating and review. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. We always appreciate it. Have a fantastic week, and we'll talk with you all next week. So what'd you think about that episode? Did you find the information useful? If you enjoyed what we discussed during today's episode of the Exercise is Health podcast, then you are going to love what I'm going to be presenting during my new training, How to Rebuild Your Aching Body in as little as 6 weeks without changing your lifestyle. It's happening this week, and you can get registered for free by going to secrets.exerciseforlifemethod.com. But space is limited, so you need to head there now. secrets.exerciseforlifemethod.com, and I can't wait to see you there. This podcast is for information purposes only. The statements and views on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Julie and Charlie Gates, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. This podcast may contain paid endorsements or advertisements for products or services. Individuals on this podcast may have a direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical issue, consult a licensed physician.